Okay, hello everyone. It is Friday, so welcome back to another AMA session here at Make a Difference. I'm Donnie in the Mad Evolution studio. Today I have in studio with me Christian Fioravanti, the creative director here at MAD, and our managing director, Steve Youngdahl. Thanks for joining us today, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, we're happy to have you here. This is going to be it's been a crazy week here at MAD, and out there in the world too, really. So we've got a lot to talk about. Our main subject today, though, is all about the green energy lie, which is kind of a short, very brief sentence, but there's a lot of substance behind that a lot of people are probably not aware of right now. So I think it's important that we, talk about what that is and just what the narrative is out there when it comes to green energy. So Christian, I feel like you've got a pretty good handle on what exactly it is we are hoping to cover today when it comes to green energy and the lie that's out there. Maybe you want to lead us into this, huh?
Well, I feel like there is a lot of bias around the term green energy, and everybody has their own individual bias as to what that is, right? So, the go-to for some people, depending on where you are politically, is, oh, that's only a left thing, and only they care about, saving the earth and having a green planet and all this stuff. And other people will say, oh, they're just talking about dealing with windmills and solar, which is super ineffective. And a lot of people are beginning to realize that now. Not everybody, but some are. And so everybody has their own take on what this is. And for us, I think that MAD is probably the only company washing all that away and saying, no, we do have legitimate solutions to these problems. And it's nothing like the narratives that exist out there today that are associated with green energy. And so I think Steve would be the best person to jump in and talk about this and give you some of those real parallels and vast differences between those narratives and what we are and what we're actually doing.
Right. Well, thank you, Christian. Actually, I don't know if I'd be the best one, but I'm the available one. Walt Teeter, who is actually our technical expert, is getting his kids off to college. And George, some people don't know this, but he kind of moonlights as a fashion consultant, and so he's on a plane coming back, and it might have been from Paris. I'm really not sure, but anyway,
it explains a lot about him when you think about it.
Yeah. And so I'm here, and you're stuck with me. So I'm gonna kind of work my way through it. I want to start this discussion with the common ground. Okay, so the common ground is, I don't care what side of the spectrum you're on, everyone wants a cleaner, greener planet. Okay, now from there it gets a little varied, because there are some technologies that people are just in love with, to the point that they have blinders on. They just want to look at the piece that they like. When we analyze the technology here, we analyze what's called the entire value chain. And when we go through that process, I'm going to break it into three pieces for you. So the value chain is, we've got the production piece. And what does it take to build this? Are we mining? If we are mining, what are we mining? What are the conditions of that? And then what kind of pollution does that create? Then we have the actual use. So you got technology that's in use, it's generating electricity. And so how does that look? Okay. And then you've got the end of life, which all of these pieces have a lifespan. And so when you get to the end of the life, what happens next? And so we like to take all of those things into consideration when we're evaluating a technology. And we haven't officially adopted the value chain index, but loosely we look at something and we know what side of the spectrum is it going to fall on. Okay, so I'm going to start off with putting everything in two broad categories. One category is what's called baseload energy, and then the other category is intermittent, which is not reliable, of a 24/7, 365. So baseload power, and maybe to put a finer point on that, cheap available baseload power is what makes an economy grow, what makes it possible. Mm-hmm. And so anytime you want to deviate from that, then you need to look at what the consequences are, both intended and unintended. So when you look at, for example, solar, and we look at the value chain, the front end of it, there's a lot of rare earth metals that are mined. Most of them come from countries that the conditions are less than desirable. We don't want to overlook at it. We just want to stare it in the face and go, okay, we know that's there, right? And so you've got the front end of this is in some cases maybe not as attractive as other sources, or maybe equal to. Okay, but they certainly don't stand out as one that really shines. Then you got the use, and we're looking at the big positive, which everybody loves, and that is you're taking advantage of Mother Nature. She's giving you the electricity, and you're getting to use that, and you're not paying for the sun, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so there's something really attractive about that, and a lot of people focus on that piece and don't want to look at anything else. But while you're in that production phase, you're categorized as intermittent. You're not baseload power. What that means is you have an overabundance when the sun is shining, and then when the sun goes down, you're out of business. And so the grid, which there's a large amount of technical expertise that goes into trying to keep the grid stable. And that means you have enough power when it's demanded, and then you can scale it back when the demand goes down. And of course, that's just the definition of baseload power. But when you throw intermittent in there, all of a sudden you have an overabundance when you don't need it all, and then it shuts down when you actually have needs. So from that standpoint, it's a mixed bag in that middle piece of the value chain. And when you get to the end, how can you recycle these? I mean, they've got some toxic materials in there. They've got a lot of rare earth metals. There are challenges associated with the recycling, and because there's no economical way to do that, the current recycling plan is to get them out of sight, out of mind, which means they'll get stacked up in places like the desert where people aren't driving by and looking at them on a regular basis. I don't think that's a very attractive issue. So sure. I've given you the pluses and minuses of each piece in the value chain. So when you add all that up, I mean, can we use solar? And the answer is sure. We just need to be aware it's not quite the panacea. It's not quite that ultimate answer that we're really all searching for. So I'm gonna juxtapose that against, let's say geothermal. So on the front end of the value chain, you need to construct it. We're mostly talking about the steel and metallurgical industries, and so you're going to have a certain amount of pollution that's involved with that. It's unavoidable. It's going to happen. But once you get set up, once you're built, how does that operate? Well, that's the beauty about geothermal. It's in the category of baseload power. You can crank that up, crank it down with the need. You keep your grid balanced. You don't have spikes. You don't have voids. It's really the perfect answer. And there's zero pollution. So you're getting your energy from Mother Earth by way of the hot rocks, which makes the steam. It's in a closed loop system. There's no pollution involved, and it operates for a very, very long time. I know that from my own personal experience, PG&E has a system. They're called the geysers because there was actually geysers in that area, and that's how they originally knew that there were hot rocks there that they could tap into. And many decades ago, that I can't remember exactly when I knew that they were doing that. I've been there as a very young man. They've been operating for a really long time. And so, you've got a really nice lifespan for that middle part of the value chain, which means what happens when do you get to the end of it? There's really no end unless the rocks cool off. So you can continually, through your prescribed maintenance and preventative maintenance and upkeep, that plant can outlive us. So it's kind of tough to beat that source of power, except for God didn't put all the hot rocks underneath high power transmission lines. And so, that's problematic. You can't just go put it where it wants to be, because then you'd have to spend like $1 billion just to bring a high power transmission line into it.
Right.
So that there's some, we love that source of power, but there's some issues that need to kind of be worked out there. Do I get too far afield here? Because
no, this is a great example, though, of how I feel like Matt is not fitting into the traditional narratives people think of when it comes to green energy, because I don't think geothermal or hydroelectric is usually utilized as an option. People think of the solar. They think of wind, they think of electric cars like a Tesla or a Prius. And we are literally saying everything you know about the green energy world from these narratives is pretty much wrong. And actually, the real solutions, the best solutions, are what Matt is working on. And that's one example of such. And so, it's very, very cool. Maybe you can address more of the things we're working on, and again, how it differs from, what they're putting out there.
Okay. So let's go back to geothermal for a moment. So we came up with a prime example of would be beautiful base load power that we'd love to be able to use, but it's just not always found in the right locations. So the solve for that is to be able to transmit the energy from that source into the grid cost effectively. And so we think the wireless transmission of electricity, which is done with several different, there's 3 different technologies that we're looking at in this regard, and we've identified each one of those for different uses. And so for this use, it's something that's actually been done. It's been proven. We've seen it. We've visited it. We've watched it. So we know it works, but it's not been commercialized. So one of the things that is on our list of projects to do is to commercialize that. And, it's like everything else. When you're in that area, it's promising. We know it works. We want to commercialize it, but it's going to take some funding to do that. And so we feel that it's definitely the future, because if you can imagine plopping geothermal plants down in the ideal locations, you put a transmission tower next to it. I mean, the United States could be a net exporter of electricity. And that's kind of weird.
Absolutely.
We talk so much about being an all of the above solution-oriented company here at MAD. And this is a great example of just how we're thinking that way, right? In terms of, okay, where do we get the energy from? Once we have it, how do we get it to where we need it to go? And then when we're finished with it, is it still safe? And what do we do with it at that point? So we're not putting Band-Aids on a wound that needs a stitch, basically. That's what solar is doing essentially at this point. And then you take the Band-Aid off and the wound's still not healed, but the Band-Aid's gone. So we're actually tackling these problems in ways where we're going to actually create actual solutions for them.
And I'm not saying that we wouldn't utilize solar in certain applications. Right. But we go in with our eyes wide open. We know what the entire contribution of that value chain, and we're just not going to focus on one little narrow piece of it that just looks like it's a panacea. We know what the whole thing's going to look like, and so we have to evaluate that for the certain needs and find out if it's good for that particular application. When we look at these things all start with somebody ringing us up. We don't go out and look for this stuff. This stuff finds us. And it's because of, George has been in the energy space since 1983, highly respected. Walt, he's been in the space for decades, highly respected. And so people come to us and they say, take a look at this. What do you think? Can you do this? And then we have an evaluation process that we go through, but we're a little bit agnostic from the standpoint that if it's going to make the situation better, we're good with that. If you're going to replace coal with natural gas because there is no other economic alternative that's going to be accepted, we think burning natural gas is going to be better than burning coal. Okay, so that's better. Is it perfect? No. We'll transition them to perfect. We'll get them into something into something that's perfect. But if we're going to immediately right now, we can economically take them out of a dirty situation and put them in a cleaner one. It's better. We'll do better.
Definitely.
Okay? So it's, we're not just hard set on just saying, if it's not perfect, we're not in. You know what? That's why we're making a difference. If we're going to make a difference, if it's going to make it cleaner and greener, and we're going to move the needle in that direction, we're going to do that.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. So two things I want to mention. We do have a question here from Crypty Girl. Hey, Crypty Girl, great to see you. So one of them is that I think we are just as much, it's fair to say, a technology company as we are an energy company because of the things we're doing. And even that is very unique in the green energy or even energy space in general. But it's important to note, and wireless energy is one component of that, maybe not even the biggest one, but a key one, certainly. The other thing is, too, that I think to Crypto Girl's question here, she's asking, what is the difference between the MAD narrative and the common green energy narrative, which is a great question. I do feel like it is heavily politicized. There's definitely, whatever side of the aisle that the politicians are on, they're using it and weaponizing it to their own purpose and means. Benefit. And in the end, what have we seen come out of all of this? Basically nothing, or nothing useful for the people. And that's why MAD is here, is because we are bringing everything to the people, even the investment side, and allowing them to get involved in funding these technologies that are real and can and will be done by this company. And so there's no guarantees, obviously. We're doing our very best, but we're creating that avenue and that vehicle for the people to get involved and to do this and to take that matter into their own hands. And I think that the political side of it is a big one to mention because of how all, encompassing it is globally and how they really use that to their own agenda, whatever it might be, good and bad. And so MAD, I think it's important to say, doesn't care about the politics. We're agnostic to all of that. We don't care if you're left or right or center or whatever your views are. If you care about a better world for all of humanity, a cleaner planet for all of us, more affordable energy for the world, more abundant energy, that is what we're focused on bringing to the table and finding the projects, or rather the projects that are coming to us, sifting through them, choosing the right ones to then fund and bring forward to the world. And we have the people to do it.
Right. What he said. That was well put, Christian. It really was. That kind of leads into everyone wants cleaner and greener. I think that's the common ground. Okay. But there's two different ways to get there. There is government regulation or subsidies to entice people into an area. And that's what I would call the push. Or there's what we refer to as the free market approach, which means we've got a cleaner, greener solution, and this is going to solve an issue that's currently not a good one. We want to move away from, but it makes economic sense, and that would be the pull. So in the United States, it's been a heavy push, a lot of regulation, a lot of social pressure. But if you were to look at on the map of the world and you were to color code it, the U.S. is pretty darn green. We've done a really good job of cleaning a lot of stuff up. When I was a young lad, the discussion revolved around acid rain because of all the sulfur oxides and the nitric oxides that went off, and heavy metal particulates and really bad and ugly stuff. And so we've done a terrific job of cleaning that up. But if you're a country and your economy relies on inexpensive baseload power, well, some of those countries are still building coal plants. Now, if we don't have a base load power solution for them that's economically comparable to or compete with a coal-fired plant, they're not going to adopt it. You can't push them. You're not going to push them from here. You're not going to tell China, stop building coal-fired power plants, because they are.
Right.
Currently,
right.
Today. India, same thing. There are a lot of countries. I understand their dilemma. Their economy revolves around the availability of cheap baseload power. So we need to have some solutions. Some of those solutions we've discussed, but some of them are new technologies that need to be commercialized. And so our approach on those are, comes across the desk, just happens because of who we are. And then we need to do our own due diligence. Now, is this something that's already working? Or does it need to be, is it a concept that needs to be developed? We typically are not going to work with a concept. We'll work with something that's developed to the point where we feel, hey, we can commercialize that. We can take a hard look at it. We look at the entire value chain, and we look for any gaps that might prevent us from taking this all the way to the final conclusion. And if it passes that process, then it can go on the list of, okay, we want to be able to commercialize this technology. I think that's where the real future is. Mm-hmm. The real future is commercializing technologies that are not in use today, but they're going to provide inexpensive baseload power in an extremely clean manner. And when I say clean, I'm looking at the whole, remember, I'm looking at the whole value chain. Yep. The middle part's really important, because when it's producing electricity, it needs to do it with a zero pollution component. Okay.
And an example of that, just to see if you can comment on this as well too, is that all of these electric cars in the world, people feel like they're being green, they're being good for the planet, they're doing all these great things for humanity by buying an electric car.
Right.
But the reality is, like you're talking about, the elements of the supply chain of the entire spectrum that are ultimately getting you to, here's that green car, what you think is a green car, is actually extremely dirty and is terrible for the planet.
The front end of that value chain is pretty ugly. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I'm not here to argue whether or not we should be driving electric cars or not. I think the market's going to take us. There's going to be, obviously, there's a significant amount of push that's involved with the electrical vehicles. I don't think that we have people that are banging the door down demanding it, but there's a lot of governments that have regulation that say, you must do this. Mm-hmm. Not everybody. In some places that's happening. Again, I'm going to take just a small swing at the political class. They usually don't look at the unintended consequences. And so the unintended consequences here, there's going to be a really messy front end of that value chain. I've heard that there's some billionaires that don't think they have enough billions. And so now they're going to start mining for these rare earth metals that are necessary to make batteries, because the battery, the demand for batteries is going to go way up if you have all these electric vehicles.
Right.
I think maybe a better solution would be to commercialize the wireless and then miniaturize the receiver and have those electric cars run off of that.
So imagine that for a second. We're talking about Nikola Tesla technology, the Wardenclyffe Tower, essentially, having those all over the planet, and you having receivers on every vehicle, on probably even aircraft, I'd imagine as well too, picking up this energy and just going all over the place, right? And I mean, that's like a Jetsons type future,
right?
And
there's the Star Trek world.
The fact that we could have that in a matter of 10 years would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, and we actually have I'm not going to say which one, but we have a university that wants to work with this on miniaturizing the receivers.
Cool.
Okay. Because at the moment they're not. I mean, we know they work. We know we can go from point A to point B, but we don't we don't have the miniaturized version, which would be necessary if you're going to be using it to run, planes, trains, and automobiles.
We've had a few questions pop up.
Yeah.
Are these wireless transmissions of electrical energy safe biologically? And Bree's asking that question.
Yes, that's the short answer. Okay, these are such an ultra low frequency. It's no more harmful than if you stood next to your AM radio. I mean, now there are some technologies that we don't like them. At least, certainly, if we had to use them, it would be under very limited circumstances. But they're way at the other end of the spectrum, and they're in the microwave spectrum, and they're just not as safe. So that's I have to qualify that answer by saying the ones that we like run at a very, very, very low frequency.
It's so reassuring because the average person, I feel like, would definitely be concerned about that when you hear the word
totally.
Wireless energy transmission.
That was one of my very first questions when we started looking at this.
Yeah,
and it's I can tell you, if you're concerned about that, there are so many things more damaging to be concerned about. That this one doesn't even, make the bottom of the list.
I mean, cell phones. I've seen cell phones. You stack these suckers up, and they can hard boil an egg given enough time. Like, that is pretty freaky.
That is freaky,
that's very freaky.
And that's not going to happen with this.
Yeah.
And so, there are, that's a perfect example. I mean, your cell phone's much more harmful than what this would be.
Yeah.
And people are carrying them around, sometimes 2 of them at a time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Did we have another question? I think we passed over a couple, or maybe we answered them without even realizing it because you're doing such an amazing job. So.
Yeah. So this is my son-in-law who's still on probation, and so he's got to say those things.
Right.
I think the audience would agree with me. I'm convinced of it. Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, I think we pretty much covered.
Looks like we've pretty much covered. Yeah. Tesla's free energy tech. Are you familiar with Nassim Haramein? Is that how you say that?
I actually am. I am familiar with him.
Okay, and Christian, take it away.
Well, I would just say that there's a lot of things that you can talk about publicly, but you maybe shouldn't if you are trying to successfully bring a lot of really great things to the public. And so while we're aware of a great deal, we try not to dive into too many rabbit holes that might be misconstrued and, can take us into some dangerous territory. So we've got to focus on the things that we can take forward right now that are provable, that are here, that are real, that are amazing and breakthrough, and bring those forth to the public and allow you to.
That's really good. So I'm going to give you an example. I mean, so, currently the projects that we have that are on the top of our lists are utilizing technologies that are already commercially viable. And so, we're in the process of entering into an agreement with a data center for us to provide, clean green energy for them. And it comes with a lot of challenges because it has to be what's called pre-grid, meaning that if the grid goes down, they're still running. This is a, mission critical process that we have to go through to say, do we have redundant sources? Is this going to be able to keep this data center going no matter what? And we're uniquely qualified to help them at that. And that's why they want to partner with us on these data centers. And so, it takes money to build the power for those, but they're already under contract and with AAA tenants, so to speak, users, and it's about as safe. I liken this to I've used this over the years. When to a short description of describing a safe deal is I financed the post office, okay?
Right.
And the check's going to be there every month, okay? And this is kind of in that category.
Definitely.
The users of this, the creditworthiness is not in question at all, and so it's not going to be one of those gusher category type returns. They're going to be really great returns, but it's not going to go wild.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, some of the newer technologies that need to be commercialized, that's a whole different story. But we like to have that those foundational pieces that help drive and subsidize any R&D we need to do. That'll be a breakthrough for the whole energy space.
Absolutely. Yeah. One thing I will say, Bree, to your last question is that I do know a very good friend of Nassim personally, so we're definitely in similar circles. But it is important that we note what we're doing here. Some of the really greatest things we are doing here are definitely not the best for the oil industry, which is why, again, we're taking this to the people. We can't go to Wall Street and say, you guys fund this, because they're tied in with all these massive players. So we have to be very careful how we navigate those waters.
You had a first part to her question too. Do you have a demonstration of your technology? Where's that little mini tower that we used to play with for our ad, right? Should we just bring that over right now?
Totally.
Because of confidentiality agreements that we've entered into, there's a limit as to what we can show. I mean, we talk about certain things, but there's a limit as to what we can demonstrate at this time. In the future, that's going to change, but at the moment, we have to respect those confidentiality agreements, and there will be the proper time and place that we will be releasing that.
There will come a time, and I can tell you, and Steve can attest to this, that pretty much every day I'm like, Steve, when can we show this or this or this? And it's hard because I'm under the NDAs and I can see these things and be aware of them, and it's so hard not to bring it to the public. Because can you imagine what would happen if we came forward and put out demonstrations of this for the public? We even have contacts to some of the largest YouTube channels on the planet that are in the technology and energy space. And if they had the opportunity to come in and do a public experiment and display of even just one of the things we're working on the breakthrough side, it would melt minds globally.
Yeah.
And we would raise more money than we could, ever need and use.
Right. But I will tell you, there's always a risk reward component. Okay.
Indeed.
And
yes.
Because we have our foundational piece are just what I'll call normal commercialization of technologies that already exist. And then we try to take a little from here and there and take some profits. We could put them into developing these groundbreaking ones. Well, when we get set to commercialize those, the people that were in early on are going to do a heck of a lot better than the ones that they're going, it's really cool. I'll get on the train once it leaves the station, right, and we'll be absolutely happy to take you. And those returns will be commensurate with the risk of that. Now, we try to minimize the risk by like, again, with our foundational piece of projects that we feel very, very comfortable with returning nice returns.
Definitely.
And then the amounts that we put into developing these other things are really like rounding errors. And so while we feel the risk is minimal, the fact of the matter is that those are the people that help bring us to the dance, and those are the ones going to do the best.
Yep. That leads well into the next question from Matt McDonald. I love what you guys are doing. Thank you, Matt. I'd like to invest. However, I'm a hundredaire, not a millionaire. Is there a place for me to get involved and get in on this?
There will be in a matter of days. We're putting the finishing touches on a component. It's under what's called Regulation CF, and it's for retail investors. And the minimum is only $500.
So exciting! It's really cool.
And so we're going to have that available. I would say, actually, I'm pretty confident in saying sometime next week we'll be rolling out with that. and
Awesome.
it's not a huge offering. It's only $5 million, and so there's going to be a limited amount of availability for people to be able to invest in that one. But there's some pretty exciting things that we'd like to get done.
Yeah,
we do. And what's amazing too is that with this, essentially because of how the directors have structured MAD for the investors, if you're investing as a regular retail person with $500, you're getting the same, basically, equivalent units that some institution's getting who's coming in for, 50 million, which is really incredible how you guys have done that.
Yeah. Today.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow's going to be a different story.
Understood. Yes.
But things always change.
But I'm serious.
For the early adopters, we're saying,
but that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen today. What the future holds is we'll have offerings that are basically, okay, we're going to take this really cool technology and we're going to roll it, and we're going to build out this segment. It's going to take this much money, and you'll get some really nice returns commensurate with something that's as safe as that is. Mm-hmm. However, the original funders of that technology get the most handsome part of that deal.
Definitely. Yeah.
So it's not for everybody. I mean, we want something for everybody. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so right now we try to appeal to that broad base by having these wonderful projects like the data centers, the hydroland, the hydroelectric. We like having those as our foundational pieces in the portfolio, and we're going to take, some of the enough of which I think it's practically considered a rounding error, and put it into these technologies to get them commercialized. And once we're ready to go with those, look out.
And it's go time.
Yeah. I love how the questions keep funneling in quicker as we talk about investing now. That's always a good sign, right?
Totally.
All Things Funnels is asking, will the token price increase over time? So if I invest now, the token value increases with the success of MAD.
I don't, George is usually the guy that jumps in with some kind of disclaimer about, what you can say and what you can't say.
Not financial advice.
And he's he's not here. Okay. You're probably getting into tokenomics, but it would be what we're doing is we're tokenizing your equity share. So we have
which is way better than just a token on a blockchain.
Right. So there's a finite amount to the offer, mm-hmm. and we're not going to take any more in that entity than what the offer is. Okay, and so as you bring in projects, it only takes one of these breakthrough technologies that we're working on to be in that module to all of a sudden have returns go crazy. Mm-hmm. So I think the question is going to be, if I had an ownership interest with returns that were exceptionally, high, and now it's what's called seasoned. We're years down the road. All these projects are in place. They've been paying. That's called seasoned. You have proven track record. Would I be able to sell those interests? And for how much? It depends on what the market is. Okay, so I'm not going to predict the market, but I think generally speaking, if you look around, you can answer that question yourself. If you're getting stratospheric, returns on a seasoned investment, is there an appetite for someone that wants to pay you considerably more than what you put into it? I'm going to guess that there's going to be that.
I would suggest yes. Again, not financial advice, but coming from the crypto space, I'd like to add a couple of things here. One massive benefit, I believe, to tokenizing our equity and being the second company in the world to do that, unless somebody else launches before us somehow, and we're not aware of that, but the second company in the world, Exodus being the first, Exodus Wallet, when you tokenize this equity and you put it on secondary exchanges to trade, and we're talking about the crypto market. So even if you're not in the crypto space, I think we all know at this point as a public that cryptos are the highest appreciating asset class in the world in our history. It's just massive, right? and will be until we have peak adoption at some point. And even then, new things will always launch. But with all of that, if you consider what's happened in the goofy returns that have come from crypto speculation, so Bitcoin, going up 6 million% in a matter of, several years, right? That's massive. From 2010 at a penny, that's a huge deal. Think about what happens when you have, hopefully, what is one day hundreds of billions of dollars, or even just billions of dollars worth of real economic value coming through these projects that is paying out real distributions to our equity holders. So when you hold the token, that's the most powerful thing. You're an owner, you're a limited partner, so you're receiving the benefit of those profits, right? But on top of that, when the crypto market figures out that, wait a second, you're telling me you have the security of the blockchain, the decentralization of the blockchain, like Ethereum, but you also have billions of dollars of economic value flowing through your token, essentially flowing through your company that's backed by that token. Oh, snap, right? I mean, what's possible there from a speculation standpoint, I think would actually shoot the token value far beyond even what it should legitimately be valued at, which we see in crypto every single day. So it's, again, an opportunity for those who are in early to take advantage of that massive overappreciation and the potential token price if this goes the way we feel it will. And again, not financial advice, but that's my feeling about it.
Yeah. Great stuff, Christian. We got another question from Bree that might lead you into another this topic a little bit more. Will the contract on Ethereum have admin keys? Will trading of MAD be censorable in any way? Will it be on Uniswap? When Ethereum forks into Pulse Chain, will you build on Pulse Chain? Four
Pulse
questions
Chain.
all in one right there.
Great
for you.
question. Well, I could tell you,
Thanks, Bree, for all the questions.
We definitely come from the same camp as well in that regard too. So I'm with you 100%. Yeah, we've discussed actually a couple of possibilities for building other technologies within our energy ecosystem where we're utilizing Pulse Chain potentially or others. So I'll just put that out there. We don't want to come in as being too biased, but we certainly do have our own interests and favorites and whatnot. That being said, think about the differences between an equity token as an actual security. We are a security. We are not a decentralized, token launching to run a smart contract autonomously. We are a centralized company that is launching a security token that is our equity, essentially, backing our equity, representative of our equity. So with that, is there admin keys? I would say yes, because, or at least that's a question I have to ask those who are developing the smart contract. But I would say yes in that, or at least if not, then there will be in that when we launch the smart contract has to be designed in such a way that the tokens cannot be transferable to people that aren't qualified. So for example.
So yeah, let me jump in.
Okay.
So we had get a little into the weeds here, but I want to be technically correct. Okay. So we have an offering that's under Reg D 506C, and you must be an accredited investor. So that token's going to have keys that can only be unlocked to another accredited investor. Then we have the retail side, which the first one is going to be launching next week, but it's only, but it's limited to $5 million. So that's once it's full, then that one's done. Mm-hmm. And that is what's called retail. You don't have to be a accredited investor. If there's going to be any keys, they're going to be pretty darn limited, if there are any at all. Potentially, because Reg CF says that you don't have to be an accredited investor, but they don't want to see you invest more than a certain amount of your income or net worth. So they do have some minor limitations, but the limitation isn't can you buy that? You have to be an accredited investor. The answer is no. And so you have two different offerings. They're going to have two slightly different takes on whatever those keys might be. But we're trying to have something for everyone.
Absolutely. So two things on that note is that with the retail tokens that are going to be available, can that be traded on Uniswap? I think theoretically it can, assuming that Uniswap can support those limited restrictions of, if somebody doesn't qualify under these restrictions, then, they can't trade. So maybe we'll see how that goes. Now, one thing I will say is I know being in the crypto space, not your keys, not your crypto, admin keys are terrible. all of the above. You can hold these tokens regardless of what offering you come in at in your MetaMask wallet, Ledger, Trezor, any of those. But again, because of the nature of what we are as a company, having a security token, an equity token, this is different than what qualifies as being good crypto. I am not a fan of admin keys at all. I am not a fan of probably everything you believe in, Bree. I'm on the same page 100%. I would just say that with this, it is different because of the nature of what the token is. So it really is, and it's also separate from your ownership. So for example, if there's admin keys on the smart contract, does that matter in somehow removing your ownership of the tokens? No, it doesn't. What if the tokens were somehow lost or even hacked? Does that even matter? No. And the reason why it doesn't is because when you're investing in MAD, you're signing your investor agreement, your subscription agreement to be a limited partner. That is what guarantees you your units, your ownership.
That's your ownership.
Exactly. So what happens to the tokens is, I don't want to say it doesn't matter because it does, but it's not as important, if that makes sense. You're still qualified to receive distribution payments. You're still an owner. You can still prove you're an owner. So those are the differences, some of the differences between this sort of a token and what exists in the rest of the crypto market. So hopefully that makes sense.
She's got another question. Bree's asking, so even though it is technically a security because of expectation of profit by the work of others, we can still buy it as retail?
That's correct. Very soon.
Right. Yeah, very soon. Yeah.
Which by the way, is super unique, I might add, right? And Steve could talk about this because up until this point, pretty much the general public could never get involved in investments of this magnitude. Right. It was always reserved for Wall Street. I don't want to go too far into that. I have very passionate opinions and beliefs about that, but it's always been reserved for those guys, never for the public. So, Steve,
this is a very disruptive manner in which we're out there raising money.
Absolutely,
it's very, very new, and the regulations that we're using and comply with are relatively new in this space, and so we're being extra cautious to comply with all of the SEC regulations to the point where we've actually retained an attorney that specializes in SEC regulated offerings to help guide us through one that'll be coming in the future under regulation Reg A, and we want to make sure that I guess we kind of have a belt and suspenders approach for compliance, but they are securities, and there are security laws that guide how we do this, and we make every attempt to make sure that we cross every T, dot every I, and we're in total compliance.
Definitely. And by the way, Bree, if you have any questions beyond that are more specific and that do get into the weeds somewhat, I'm happy to have you reach out to me directly, christian@mad.energy. Feel free to send me an email. And I know for a fact that you and I have a lot of common interests in the crypto space as well as even beyond that. And so we can definitely have deeper discussions, but hopefully that's useful.
Nice. Okay. Well, do we have anything else we want to discuss, or should we wrap up this AMA session?
Wrap it up.
Okay. Well, thanks so much to everyone for tuning into this Friday's AMA. Steve and Christian, thank you both for being here. Remember to smash that like button if you guys enjoyed this. Share with your friends and family. Drop a comment and ring that subscribe bell. Follow us at Mad the Future on our Instagram and our Twitter. So we'll see you guys next Friday at our AMA, or check us out on our next live streams, which should be coming up on Thursdays again very soon.
Yes.
Yeah, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks, everyone.
Discovermad.com.
Discovermad.com. Thanks, Christian. I knew I'd forget one thing.
No worries. See you guys.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.